PCI slots. PCI stands for Peripheral Component Interconnect. It is an interconnection system between a microprocessor and attached devices in which expansion slots are spaced closely for high-speed operation. If the heat generated by a CPU and other chips is not dissipated, it may melt those chips, making them inoperable. Therefore, we need a heatsink. The heatsink is a component that cools the device by dissipating the heat into the surrounding air. A heatsink is designed to increase the surface area in contact with the cooling medium surrounding it. The fan moves cool air across the heatsink, pushing hot air away from the computer, thus helping to cool the chip. The motherboard also contains ports for connections to various input-output devices. The motherboard also contains SATA and PATA ports. PATA or parallel ATA is an interface standard for interconnection of storage devices such as hard disks, floppy drives, and optical drives in computers. SATA or serial ATA is a new standard for connecting hard disks to the computer. It is based on serial signaling technology. USB or Universal Serial Bus is an industry standard that defines the cables, connectors, and communication protocols used in a bus for connection, communication, and power supply between computers and electronic devices. Motherboards also contain connectors which receive electrical power from the computer power supply and distribute it to the CPU, chipset, main memory, and expansion card. It also contains a clock generator which produces the system clock signal to synchronize the various components. But how do all these components communicate with each other? This communication takes place through buses. A bus is simply a circuit that connects one part of the motherboard to another. Here are some of the buses found on a motherboard. Front side bus. The front side bus connects the CPU to the north bridge. A memory controller is located on the north bridge, which gives the CPU fast access to memory. Since the CPU reaches the memory controller through the north bridge, the front side bus speed can dramatically affect a computer's performance. The backside bus connects the CPU with a level 2 or L2 cache. The speed of the backside bus is determined by the processor. The memory bus connects the north bridge to the memory. The IDE or ATA bus connects the south bridge to the disk drive. The AGB bus connects the video card to the CPU and the memory. Its speed is typically 66 MHz. The PCI bus connects the PCI slots to the south bridge. Its speed is typically 33 MHz. PCI Express is faster than PCI, but still compatible with current software and operating systems. However, it is likely to replace both PCI and AGB buses in newer systems. The motherboard serves a critical purpose in a computer. It is the workhorse behind the computer's processes, helping to link everything together and run the computer. BIOS is a software, which is the first thing that is executed when the computer is turned on. It identifies and checks all the system hardware components.
A few words of advice. Motherboards are a very important component on the computer and a necessary for the function of the desktop or a laptop computer. But this product does contain certain harmful components and should be recycled properly. One such component is a substance called beryllium, which is a very strong and light metal used to create strings and connections. However, it is declared as a carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Usually, when you think of a motherboard, you may not consider the various possibilities for reusing and recycling this item. This computer component will be recycled about 90% of the time, but there is a slight percentage that can be refurbished or reused. Here are the three options for recycling your used motherboard. A small company known as motherboardgifts.com has been turning this useless item into something unique for technology lovers. It converts old motherboards into various items such as notebook covers, clipboards, and various other things. You name it and they make it. If your motherboard is unusable, then there is generally no turning back. A motherboard is a major component on a computer. Once it is no longer functional, very little can be done to make it work again. Still, it is advised that you check with the manufacturer for the product as it may be salvageable in some manner. You can even recycle motherboards. Like other computer components, some local recycling facilities will have drop-off sections for old electronics, or they will hold special collection days for such items. You may also consider sending them to a third-party recycler or returning them to the manufacturer. Do your bit.
So finally, the review for our course module. There are some questions. Where is the BIOS stored in the machine? And you can also read about USB 3.0 over USB 2.0. While you buy a laptop, if the USB port has a blue colored port, then it is a USB 3.0, and USB 3.0 is really fast as compared to the USB 2.0. Another question: what is the maximum transfer rate that SATA can support? And SATA is the connection between the hard disk and the motherboard, and it can be also used to connect CD-ROMs. And can you erase the BIOS from the computer? And what if you erase the BIOS? Can you replace it? Or if you've removed it, then what would happen? Another question is, if you buy a graphic card, which slot of the motherboard would you add it? These are certain questions that you would like to answer yourself.